Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto steals Sasuke's eyes. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. Naruto was crying looking over his best friend. He still couldn't believe he hurt his best friend because he was not powerful enough to defend himself. He was smart but not as smart as Sasuke, they were rivals. He tried to heal Sasuke with the limited medic jutsu he learned from scrolls he stole from the library, but it was hopeless. He only really learned how to transplant eyes because he thought that it was cool to learn just in case. Sasuke, he said. Sasuke. The young Uchiha's eyes slowly opened, his newly discovered Sharingan shining bright. Naruto, he said, I'm going to die, aren't I? Naruto shook his head violently. No, you can't die, he said, pulling Sasuke's head into his arms and lap. Don't die, you have to avenge your brother and your clan. It's too late, Naruto, stammered Sasuke. I can't feel my body, I can hardly breathe, he hit my lung. It's full of blood. Naruto, I'm so sorry. I was so cruel. I was threatened by your quick growth, but some good came of that. We made each other better. We were good for one another. But now I must leave you. I'm sorry, I can't help you anymore. We could have been great friends. Sasuke's Sharingan eyes came into focus again. Maybe I can help you one last time, he said. Naruto, don't give up on your dream, become Hokage. Take my Sharingan, let my eyes show you the path you must take. Naruto, we'll always be together. We'll always be friends, he said in gasps. If you ever need to light the darkness, replace my eyes with my brother's. His eyes are held in my house, hidden in the hidden room in the basement. With that he passed, and Naruto sadly transplanted his eyes with the knowledge he learned from the medical scrolls. He looked at Sasuke's limp body. He felt hatred. He could never forgive Haku for this. He was so filled with hate, he wanted his enemy's blood so bad he could taste it. He couldn't see him, but he felt power from the rage. Haku let Naruto transplant the eyes because he truly didn't want the kid to die. He had missed killing the kid in the process. Haku said calmly, is that the first time you saw a comrade die in battle? Shut the fuck up, I am going to kill you for that. With that, Naruto's eyes activated, showing the Mangekyo Sharingan. He let out a ki that was far more sinister than even the Kyuubi, and an entity rose from the ground surrounding Naruto. It gave an unholy roar, making Haku freeze. It punched Haku through the ice mirror, breaking the porcelain mask, then grabbed Haku from the ground and started squeezing him until his body started convulsing, and then it exploded. The entity threw Haku's body at Zabuza. Then Naruto felt the anger recede and he passed out from exhaustion. Meanwhile, the chakra pulsed in his hand, the lightning blade, named as such when he used it to cut a bolt of lightning in half. He glared at Zabuza, who was in the jaws of several of his ninja hounds. I won't let you kill Tazuna, he's a good man with a good purpose. Kakashi said. Your purpose, however, ends here. That said, he rushed at Zabuza, the Chidori sparkling in his hand, all of sudden stopping. His eyes widened because of the sight he saw from where his students were. It was nothing he has ever seen before. He saw Zabuza's apprentice in the hands of an entity being squeezed to death before the poor kid burst like a melon. The kid was thrown at Zabuza, hitting him with the remans. The dogs poofed away, and then Zabuza was about to attack when he heard a small chuckle. Kakashi looked to his left as Zabuza looked to his right. There stood Gato, surrounded by 50 men. Well, this isn't going as planned, said Gato. The idea was for you two to kill each other off. But you're both alive. Zabuza, sorry, but I can't have you on the payroll anymore, you're too expensive. Zabuza let out a small chuckle. Well, Kakashi, he said, our battle seems to be over. Now that I'm no longer in Gato's employment, we have no quarrel. Guess you're right, said Kakashi. However, the hounds of you have rendered my arms completely useless. He said, and I have to make Gato pay for betraying me. Mind if I borrow your kunai? He asked as he torn his mask off with his teeth. Sure, said Kakashi and tossed one of his kunai to the demon of the mist. Zabuza caught the knife in his mouth and took off racing after Gato, his limp arms trailing behind him. Gato let out a small gasp before turning and fleeing into the ranks of his men. Zabuza followed him, cutting his way through them until he reached the other end. There he drove the kunai into Gato's chest, yanked it out and slashed him across the throat. Gato's body flew off the bridge and into the sea. As soon as Gato's body hit the water, a countless number of blades sunk into Zabuza's back. Zabuza turned and stumbled out of the mob where he fell next to Haku. And died staring the boy he loved like a son, in the eyes. Kakashi turned to the mob and watched as they came to terms with what had just happened. He knew that as soon as they realized they just lost their meal ticket they would resort to more drastic measures, like raiding the village. They turned grumbling amongst themselves and started to advance on Kakashi. Just as they came close, an arrow sunk into the bridge. Kakashi turned and saw that the entire village had come to defend their home and leading the pack was Arani. Kakashi smiled under his mask. "Naruto, you've done it." He turned and faced the mobsters with the villager at his back. Seeing that they were outnumbered the thugs quickly turned and left. Letting out a sigh Kakashi pulled his headband over his left eye. It was over. He didn't know how right he was. "Sasuke, Naruto," came Sakura's distraught voice echo in his ears. Kakashi turned and ran to his students. "Sakura," he said and she turned and latched onto the front of his vest. Kakashi checked Sasuke first. Needles covered his body including some in his left lung. He checked for a pulse. The last of the Uchiha was dead. Then he turned to Naruto. He was covered in needles as well but when he checked for a pulse, he found one. It was faint but defiantly there. It was then he noticed Naruto's eyes had blood coming from them. Fearing the worst Kakashi slowly opened the boy's eyelids. What he found caused his breath to catch in his throat. He had charcoal black pupils that of Sasuke's. Later, Naruto sat with his knees drawn up to his chest as he stared at a small stone. He'd been here every day since the day he got back from the Land of Waves a month and a half ago. It was Sasuke's headstone. Here lies Sasuke Uchiha, last of the Uchiha, a friend forever. He'd read the inscription thousands of times. Sasuke had given him the Sharingan, but he had yet to show it off. Kakashi had Naruto see a medic who was under genjutsu to secretly change his eye color back to its normal. Kakashi wondered why Naruto's Sharingan turned off in the first place but concluded that it was because of the 9 tails and his Senju DNA. The only people who knew the real truth were Sakura and Kakashi, not even the third knew. This of course brought more grief to Naruto as many villagers saw the death of the last of the Uchiha his fault. He hadn't expected this, he had been getting treated better since making Genin. But now he was back to square one. Of course Iruka-sensei and Kakashi-sensei supported him as much they could and Ayame and the old man at Ichiraku's helped a bit. Even old man Hokage visited him from time to time and even came to the headstone once and hugged him as he cried over his inability to protect a comrade. However, his biggest supporter surprisingly enough was Sakura. Yes, she had been upset and cried for a couple days. But she was nothing compared to Naruto. Naruto had been with Sasuke almost every day when they were in the Land of Waves training together and even though neither of them had really wanted it, the root for a strong friendship had been planted. However, just as it seemed like that tree had began to grow, that root was ripped out. Sakura visited Naruto every day. She'd spend hours searching the village until she found him. Sometimes he would be in his apartment, which she now had a key for despite his protest. Sometimes he'd been on top of the Hokage monument on the fourth's head, but most commonly he was here, at Sasuke's grave. Before Sasuke's death Sakura had never ever seen Naruto cry. After his death, Naruto cried 2 or 3 times a week. After a while Naruto stood and walked back toward the village. His hands tucked in the pockets of his black pants. After the funeral, Naruto had gotten rid of everything that reminded him of Sasuke. That included his orange jumpsuit, which Sasuke used to tease him about from time to time. Now he wore a simple pair of black pants, black shinobi sandals and a deep blood-red t-shirt with a black Uzumaki kanji. He wasn't wearing his headband, he hadn't worn it since he got back. He hadn't been a mission. He rubbed the bandage covering the right side of his face thinking back to when he'd woken up. Flashback. Naruto heard all over as he slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were covered in thick bandages. He slowly sat up and reached for the bandages, intent on taking them off. "Don't," came a familiar baritone voice. He turned to notice Kakashi sitting in a chair next to him reading his book. "Your eyes haven't completely taken root, and won't for the next 2 weeks. Leave the bandages on." Naruto let out a sad sigh and dropped his hands in his lap. A sad look on his face. "Sasuke is dead," said Kakashi. "I know," said Naruto flatly, tears sprung up under his bandages. "I couldn't save him, Kakashi-sensei, why couldn't I?" I tried and tried, but everything I do I screw up. The graduation exam, your test that we only passed because of Sasuke, those stupid D ranks where I kept letting my pride get in the way, and now, I've been a fool. If I didn't let pride get in my way, Sasuke would still be alive. He sucked his knees to his chest, put his arms on his knees and cried. He couldn't remember how long it was for, but he knew it was a while. The whole time Kakashi stayed by him, he knew exactly what he was going through. Pride was the bane of many ninja, Kakashi included. Because of his foolishness and pride, Obito had died an unnecessary death. Now Naruto blamed himself for Sasuke's death. He didn't realize he wasn't the one at fault. Naruto, said Kakashi. Naruto looked up at him, his eyes red and puffy. Sasuke's death wasn't your fault. I know you. I've trained you for 6 months. I know you did anything and everything you could to save him. It hurts. Believe me when I tell you I know what you're going through. But crying about it won't bring him back. It's okay to feel sad about losing him in the way you did, but crying won't help. Kakashi said all this looking at the far wall. Finally he turned to Naruto. However, on the reverse side of things, don't bear this burden alone either. Sakura and you are going through the same thing. Talk to her, talk to me, talk to all your friends back at the village. Don't just endure the weight of a lost comrade alone. It'll weigh you down and you'll let it take over your entire life. Naruto, Sasuke has given a great gift. Don't let it go waste by blaming yourself. It'll tear you up. We'll help each other, Kakashi finished with a small one-eye smile. Naruto's face fell back to look at his hands in his lap. The door opened, causing Naruto to look up and see the last person in the world he'd wanted to face, Sakura Haruno. He'd expected her to start yelling and screaming and insulting him, made him feel terrible. However, as soon as she saw the broken and defeated look in his eyes, she crumbled. Oh Naruto, she whispered as she came to his bedside and knelt down on the floor and wrapped her arms around his neck. You did your best. I know you did. It wasn't your fault. It was Haku's. It's not your fault. I'm so sorry, Sakura. Naruto choked out. I'm so sorry. He cried into her shoulder as she gently stroked his back and whispered that it was going to be okay. Tears sprinkled at the edge of her eyes, but she forced them back. She'd cried over Sasuke's body for 3 days, now she needed to be strong for Naruto. The 3 days Naruto had been out had given her a lot of time to think. She hadn't been in love with Sasuke, she'd been in love with the idea of loving Sasuke. But when you boiled it all down, it was just a childhood crush. Sasuke was her friend first and now he was gone. But she'd watched at a distance as Sasuke and Naruto got closer and closer each day, despite how much they'd resisted. The teamwork they'd shown in their efforts to free Kakashi from Zabuza's water prison jutsu was a beacon of that friendship. And now, just as they both were finding their first true friend, Sasuke had been killed and it broke Naruto. Sakura refused to be weak right now, there would be time for that later. Right now Naruto needed what little strength she had to offer. Naruto struggled to get his sobs under control with staggered ragged gasps. Shish, shish, shish. Sakura soothed, trying to help him calm down. It's all right, Naruto, she rocked him side to side as if he were a 3-year-old. Naruto finally got himself under control and went slack in Sakura's arms. She pulled back a little to look straight into his bandaged eyes. She could tell there was pain behind the bandages but also gratitude. She had been there for him, not yelled at him, when he needed her most. Thank you, Sakura, he rasped. She gave him a soft smile and hugged him one more time before standing up and leaving the room. Kakashi, who'd watched Sakura grieve over Sasuke's body for 3 days, let a small smile grace his features. They had come together when they needed each other most. Naruto, stay in bed today, and if you're strong enough tomorrow, we'll send word for an escort back. Naruto nodded his head. Kakashi squeezed his shoulder and left the room. Naruto laid back down and let sleep take him. End flashback. When Naruto came out of his thoughts, he found himself on top on the Hokage monument. He pondered to himself just how long he'd been up here. The sun was going down now, but there was no telling how long he'd wandered aimlessly through the village until coming here. Deciding he'd stay a while and try to settle down, Naruto sat on the fort's head and drew his knees to his chest. Resting his chin on his knees, he gazed out across the village. It had changed since Sasuke's death. The villagers were downcast, disheartened. The greatest of their clans was now forever gone, and with them, the Sharingan. He and Kakashi were the only one who still had it. "I thought I might find you up here," came a familiar feminine voice. Naruto turned to see Sakura walking towards him. She wasn't dressed in her usual pink dress, instead she wore a white blouse with black pants and her sandals. Her long pink hair was drawn up in a high ponytail and she wore a kind smile on her face, one Naruto had been seeing more and more of every day. "Hey Sakura," he said, turning back to face the village. Sakura's smile fell a bit. He'd been like this since they got back from the land of waves. She couldn't really blame him, but she kind of missed the old Naruto, the Naruto who yelled and made outrageous promises, the Naruto who wouldn't take being outdone by anyone, the Naruto whose face would light up when she walked into view. Now he just acknowledged her presence and went back to brooding. She slowly walked to his side and sat on her heels, wrapping her arms around her knees. "How long you been up here?" she asked him. He shrugged. "I dunno," he mumbled, not looking away from village. Sakura's smile fell a bit more. It fell to a full-blown frown when his stomach growled and he didn't do a thing about it. Anyone who knew him would have expected him to jump up and declare he was going to eat Shiraku's for some ramen. Now he just stared out into space, his stomach rumbling. "Alright," said Sakura, standing back up. "Let's get something to eat, my treat." Naruto shrugged again and let Sakura drag him to his feet. He followed her down the mountain, his hand tucked in his pockets. They slowly made their way to the ramen stand ran by old man Ichiraku and Ayame. She sat him down at his favorite stool before sitting down next to him. "Well, if it isn't Naruto and Sakura," said the old man. "Hey guys," said Ayame. "Hey," said Sakura, "one plain ramen and one miso ramen with pork." She'd been here enough with Naruto to know what he would want. Naruto had his arms crossed on the counter and his chin resting on his arms. Sakura frowned at him before turning to Ayame, who was leaning across the counter. "He's still down, huh?" she whispered, looking at Naruto's sulking form. "Yeah, he just can't forgive himself for Sasuke's death," Sakura whispered. "And to make things worse, 90% of the village blames him too." "Ayame, I was there too, but they don't blame me, so was Kakashi-sensei, and they don't blame him. They blame Naruto solely because of what he is, and it's not fair." Sakura could feel tears threatening, and was only able to fight them off because the food was ready and placed in front of them. Naruto simply picked up a pair of chopsticks and started to eat. Sakura watched him emotionless slurp down his noodles. "Oh Naruto," she thought before turning to her own ramen and slowly started eating her own ramen. They ate in silence, and as soon as he was done, Naruto stood up and tossed a few bills on the table and left. Sakura picked them up and put them in her back pocket with the intention of returning it to him later. Then she quickly finished her own ramen and reached her wallet. Tucci shook his head. "It's on the house, Sakura. I can't repay you for what you're doing for him. He kinda feels like a son to me." He also said, "You keep on looking after him, he needs you." Sakura smiled and nodded her head. Then she jumped down and ran after Naruto. When she caught up with him, she laced an arm though his, an act that would have caused the boy to get very uncomfortable. Now he didn't even look at her. Trying to find a good conversation topic, Sakura looked up at the sky. It was late, the moon was high in the sky and the stars were out. "Hey," she said, "I'll walk you home." The slightest nod of his head was her only answer. She tightened her grip on his arm and started leading him towards his apartment. Naruto didn't say anything. He was staring at the sky for a long time. She couldn't read his face. She used to be able to read him like a book. The new Naruto was so withdrawn and she didn't like it. "Sakura, I'm alright," he said. They were at his apartment and she knew he was dismissing her. But she wasn't leaving him to brood, not this time. "No, you're not Naruto," she said without a moment's hesitation. "You sulk all the time. You let other people's words affect you like you never have before. Naruto, you've given up on your Nindo. Never give up and always keep your word. No matter what, you've lost sight of that." "Naruto, that's okay. We all lose sight of things, but it's time you found it again." He stepped into his apartment in an attempt to escape her, but she stopped the door and perused him. She found him standing in his living room, shoulders shaking. He was crying. "I couldn't save him, Sakura. It's my fault, he's dead. I killed him. I wasn't strong enough," he said. "I should have done more. Now Sasuke is dead because of it." He dropped to his knees, burying his face in his hands. Sakura raced to his side, taking him in her arms. "It's not your fault, Naruto," she soothed. "It's not. Haku killed him, not you." "Oh Naruto." Sasuke knew what being a ninja meant. He took that mission, and he fought because he had a goal. Naruto, he wouldn't want you to beat yourself up over this. As hard and cold as Sasuke was, he wouldn't want you to blame yourself. By this point Naruto had his arms around Sakura, hugging her to him like she was his lifeline, the only thing anchoring him to the ground. Sakura pulled back and took his face in both her hands so she could look him right in the eyes. "Naruto, let him go," she said. "Put Sasuke to rest. Honor him by fulfilling your dream. And become Hokage. He wanted you to have his eyes so that you could show him the excellent ninja you could become." Naruto's crying slowly reduced to sniffles, then subsided altogether. "Here, let's get you to bed." She helped him up and led him to his bedroom. Once they got there, she sat him down on the bed and stood up. "You get changed. I'm going to get you something to drink." She turned and left, headed for his small kitchen, and went through his cupboards looking for a glass. Once she found one, she filled it with water from the tap and carefully carried it back to his room. She found Naruto lying on his bed in his boxers. Averting her eyes, Sakura pulled the covers over his body and got him to sit up and helped him drink half the glass and set the rest down on his bedside table. "Get some sleep, Naruto," she said. "I'll see you in the morning." Naruto sagged back down under the covers and rolled onto his side. "Good night, Sakura. I am going to be stronger for him, that's what he would want," he said, a hint of the old Naruto in his voice. Sakura couldn't help but smile. "Damn it," he thought to himself as he raced through the trees. "I am so late, they're gonna kill me." He sped up, trying to reach his destination on time. That was until he missed a step and went crashing down to the forest floor. Nursing a sore shoulder, he dragged himself to his feet and started to dejectedly walk, no longer caring he was going to be late anyway. He finally reached where he was going, a small clearing with a black stone on the eastern edge. He took in his surroundings. There were two people in the clearing, a girl who looked close to his age, with a great figure and the most amazing pink hair he'd ever seen. She wore a hot pink t-shirt and black silk pants. On her feet were shinobi sandals, and her headband was tied onto the top of her head, to hold her hair back. The second person was a boy, about his age, maybe a year older. He had long, shaggy and spiky blonde hair. He wore a blood-red t-shirt with the kanji of Uzumaki on the back and black pant. Black shinobi sandals were on his feet. On his head was a blue headband. He kind of resembled the fourth Hokage. The girl turned to him, her face angry. "Late again, Kaka." She cut herself off. "Hey, you're not Kakashi-sensei." "Who are you? Is this Team 7? He asked, a bit shy. "Yes," the girl replied. "Why do you ask?" He hesitated, however, before he could give his reason. A voice behind him cut him off. "So, you must be Hanabi." Hanabi turned to see a tall man with silver hair and his headband over one eye standing behind him with his hand tucked into his pockets. "Hanabi?" the girl asked. "Yes, Sakura, Naruto, this is Hanabi Mara," said the silver-haired man. The blonde looked at him with suspicion. "He's the newest member of Team 7. The blonde's face contorted, but he stayed silent. The pinkette, however, did not. "But Kakashi-sensei, I'm not sure if that's—" She cut herself off again, glanced nervously in the blonde. Hanabi glanced at him again and saw the boy had his face down, his blonde hair masking his eyes. Hanabi didn't have to be a mind reader to see that the boy was against this idea. He just hoped he wouldn't blame him. It wasn't his choice. He'd been placed on this team because on his last team he was fighting more and more with a teammate, and it had already jeopardized several of their missions. So to end the bickering, the squad had been broken up and Hanabi had been assigned to this team. He knew some of the history behind the infamous Team 7. Sasuke Uchiha had once been a member of this team, but he died in the Land of Waves on a mission that had escalated far beyond the abilities of any genin. He had been fighting the enemy on his own while the Uzumaki boy stood by and watched. It was because of the blonde-haired boy that the last of the Uchiha was dead. Balling his fists, Hanabi glared at the boy, but try as he might, he couldn't get the young man to raise his gaze. He then said something he shouldn't have. "I heard you were the one who let Sasuke Uchiha die because he had to protect your sorry ass." In a flash, Naruto was right behind him with a kunai to his throat, about to slice his jugular when Kakashi yelled. "Naruto, put down the weapon." Naruto reluctantly put the weapon down, glaring the hole while at Hanabi with a key that made Hanabi freeze with fear. "All right," said Kakashi, "let's get on with today's training. It'll be relatively short. Combat training, you'll fight each other for 3 hours. Do not hold back. If you do, you will get injured because your opponent won't." Hanabi stared at the man. They were expected to fight each other. He glanced at his new teammates. Neither of them seemed fazed in the least. However, since Hanabi is new, I'm adding a second rule. For 1 hour, 2 of you will pair up and attack the other. This will also help work on cooperative fighting and teamwork. First will be Hanabi and Sakura against Naruto. Naruto. The blonde finally looked up. Don't use it, that's the only restriction. You're not ready. All other jutsu is allowed though. Naruto nodded. Got it, Kakashi-sensei, he said. Hanabi noticed Sakura almost seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Okay then, on the whistle, said Kakashi. Sakura walked over to stand next to Hanabi and the Naruto stood across from them. What are his weaknesses? Asked Hanabi. Sakura stared at Naruto for a second before turning to reply. Genjutsu, she said. Well, there went that plan. Hanabi didn't know any genjutsu. He would just have to figure something out. A shrill whistle sounded across the clearing. Naruto leapt straight for them, a kunai in hand. Hanabi noticed he was coming right for him. He froze. He was hardly any good at close combat. He closed his eye waiting for the cold bite of steel. That was until a ringing met his ears. He opened his eyes and saw Sakura standing in front of him, blocking Naruto's kunai with her own. To looked over her shoulder at him. Don't just stand there, help me, she said. Hanabi nodded and drew his own kunai. Naruto leapt away from them and threw his knife, which Sakura deflected easily. Naruto landed about 15 feet away and stated, flashing through hand signs. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. He yelled and brought his hand to his mouth. He placed 2 fingers on the corner of his lips and exhaled. A massive ball of flame launched at them. Sakura and Hanabi leapt out of the way in opposite directions. Then Naruto crossed his fingers. Shadow clone jutsu. 19 clones phased into existence. Then they charged. Meanwhile, Kakashi sat in a nearby tree watching the 3 genin fight. He could help but smile. In the 2 months Naruto had been training to use Sharingan, he had come a rather long ways. Even though he was more withdrawn and quieter since Sasuke's death, there were some things about Naruto that Kakashi believed would never change. Like his unbelievable work ethic. Kakashi had had to physically force Naruto to stop training 3 times, or risk total chakra depletion. It was true that Naruto had a substantial amount more chakra than Kakashi, but the hours Naruto put into his training would put a normal person in a near-coma state. About a month into the training, Kakashi stumbled across another change in Naruto. When Sasuke had given Naruto Sharingan, he'd also inadvertently transferred his own prowess with fire jutsu to Naruto. Naruto could now use fire jutsu so powerful it rivaled Sasuke's hell and even Kakashi's. Kakashi watched as Naruto attacked with his shadow clones. Like he said, some things never change. Like Naruto's ability to create a ridiculous amount of shadow clones. The 3 had battled for 45 minutes now, and so far, Sakura and Hanabi had been able to fight Naruto to a standstill. Though Naruto had improved in leaps and bounds, Sakura had improved quite a bit too. She said that her total inability to do anything against Zabuza and Haku had opened her eyes, and she had committed herself to training, even joining Naruto and Kakashi at times when they were training with Sharingan. The buzzer went off. Alright, switch, yelled Kakashi. Naruto and Hanabi versus Sakura. The transition was flawless. Naruto and Sakura just leapt into the air and switched places. They resumed battling. Sakura struggled a bit more than Naruto did. But that was to be expected. Naruto was the strongest genin on their team. Hanabi, on the other hand, well. Flashback. You wanted to see me, Lord Hokage? Asked Kakashi, stepping through the door to the Hokage's office. Ah yes, Kakashi, said the Hokage, I have news for you. What is it? Asked Kakashi, curious. I found a replacement for Sasuke on your team, he replied. Kakashi had been afraid of this. Lord Hokage, I don't, started Kakashi, but the village leader cut him off. You don't think Naruto is ready, he said. Kakashi, we need Team 7 up to full strength again. We need you to start taking missions again. Here, this is a dossier on your new student. Kakashi took the papers from the Hokage and began to flip through them. You can see why I put him on your team. Yes, this boy, said Kakashi, is terrible. Only 5 successfully completed missions, all D rank. He has almost no fighting skill. His scores were worse than Naruto's. Exactly, said the Hokage. He's quite behind, and since you have 2 of the most advanced genin of their generation, I was hoping they could rub off on him. Kakashi saw his reasoning but still wasn't sure it was a good idea. Lord Hokage, Naruto won't like this, he doesn't want to replace Sasuke, said Kakashi. I'm afraid he would just push Hanabi away. But the Hokage was having none of it. Kakashi, I've made my decision, he said. Kakashi bowed. Yes, Lord Hokage, he replied and turned. We'll have a training exercise tomorrow. Please have him meet us at Training Field 7. The Hokage nodded. End flashback. Kakashi had been right. Naruto wasn't working with Hanabi at all. He was fighting Sakura on his own. Hanabi was being left behind. Meanwhile, Naruto threw 3 more kunai at Sakura as he flipped over a branch and launched himself at Sakura. Hanabi stood on the ground watching, not believing what he was seeing. Naruto was good, really good. Naruto dropped to the ground in a crouch, his left knee bent, his right leg straightened out to the side. He looked over his shoulder. You plan on helping anytime soon? He asked Hanabi. Hanabi hesitated. Naruto scoffed and raced at Sakura. Why'd I even ask? He leapt at Sakura, aiming a kick at her head. She ducked it. He landed behind her. She turned and swung at his head. Naruto leapt backwards, landing on his shoulders and kicked right back to his feet. He threw a roundhouse at her head, which she spun under, drawing a kunai. Naruto drew his own kunai and parried the incoming attack. They stood locked like that for a couple seconds before a buzzer sounded. Alright, last switch, said Kakashi from his tree. Sakura and Naruto versus Hanabi. Naruto heard Hanabi gasp. Sakura and Naruto stood side by side before looking at each other and nodding. Naruto threw 3 shuriken. Hanabi gasped again and leapt to his left. Naruto and Sakura sprinted at him, Naruto leading. Naruto dropped to one knee and delivered a hard straight right to Hanabi's stomach. Hanabi doubled over and stumbled backwards several feet. Sakura jumped onto Naruto's shoulder and leapt into the air. She caught Hanabi in the side of the face with a hard kick. Hanabi flew another several feet to his right and landed hard on his back. Naruto jumped into the air, spun a couple times and fell straight at Hanabi, his right leg bent. Hanabi rolled to his right and avoided the deadly knee, which landed only a couple inches from his face. He leapt to his feet. Sakura ran at Naruto, who was still in his crouch. Placing a hand on each of his shoulders, she cartwheeled over him and caught Hanabi with each of her feet. Naruto jumped to his feet and rolled across Sakura's back. He brought a right punch down on the top of Hanabi's head, snapping the young boy's head down, and then delivered a left uppercut directly into his face. Hanabi hit his back hard, his breath rushing from his lungs. He laid on his back looking up at Naruto and Sakura, who were standing over him. Neither breathing really hard. That's enough, came Kakashi's voice. We're done for the day. Meet at the bridge tomorrow, we have a mission. Naruto didn't say anything as he turned and started to leave. Sakura gave Hanabi a glance before turning and leaving as well. It didn't go unnoticed by either Kakashi or Hanabi that neither offered to help him up. Kakashi sighed. Naruto left the training field with his hands in his pockets. He didn't even seem to notice Sakura walking with to him. Both her arms wrapped around his upper right arm. He just stared at the ground, putting one foot in front of the other. Sakura frowned. Since that day 2 months ago, Naruto had fallen even deeper into himself. The only time he seemed to open up was when he was training. Whether it was with her or Kakashi, it seemed to help, but the second it ended, he would shut them out again. She knew where he was going without him even telling her. Hey Naruto, she said, once you get done visiting him, come find me. I'll be in the town market, okay? He nodded and continued on his way. Sakura gave him a squeeze on the arm and left him. Naruto kept walking, letting his feet guide him. His mind traveled to the boy they'd trained with. What right did he have to replace Sasuke? He was terrible. Sasuke was 100 times better. He and Sakura hadn't even been going all that hard, but almost everything they threw at him found its mark. Did Kakashi really think they could go on a mission with him? He reminded him of himself, his old pathetic self who hadn't been able to protect Sasuke. It made him so angry. He looked around and realized he was standing at Sasuke's headstone. Hey man, he said, squatting down and brushing off the few leaves that covered it. Sorry I'm late. I had to train with Kakashi-sensei and Sakura. You always talk to yourself? Asked a voice behind him. He turned. What are you doing here? Naruto asked the visitor. It was none other than Shikamaru Nara. Shikamaru shrugged. Came to pay my respects, responded Shikamaru. My teens be gone for a while and I thought I'd come say hey. He walked up and stood next to Naruto, who had stood up by this point. How long you been here? Naruto shrugged. Not long, he said, but I can't stay long either. I have to meet Sakura. Shikamaru nodded. Well, it was great seeing you again, Naruto, Shikamaru said. Naruto nodded and turned to leave. He tucked his hands in his pockets and hunched his shoulders. After walking for a good 10 minutes, he's the village market. Was a wide area in the middle of town full of stall vendors and street shops. Naruto scanned the area for Sakura's distinct pink hair. He found her standing at one of the stalls, next to a girl with blonde hair. Naruto saw Ino, so Naruto turned to walk away, but Sakura must have turned around because she called out to him. Naruto, there you are, she called. He turned to see her racing towards him. Ino held back her mouth a firm line. Naruto knew what was going on. In the past 4 months he'd been back. Ino had tried extremely hard not to listen to the rumors that said Naruto had let Sasuke die. She tried so hard not to blame him. She slowly walked over to Sakura and Naruto. Hey Sakura, I'll see you later, okay? She said, and without looking at him she added, nice seeing you, Naruto. And like that she was gone. Sakura let out a small sigh as she wrapped her arms around Naruto's. She did it quite often now, neither really knew why, but it was comfortable. Sakura figured she did it to protect Naruto, give him something else to focus on than the harsh words and cruel whispers that always surrounded him every time he went out. They walked through the market for a while, Sakura stopping occasionally to look at something at a stall or admire an item at a street shop. Naruto never said anything, he just walked with her, stood by her and watched over her, a silent escort. As the night wound down, Naruto decided it was probably time he got her home. She agreed and together they walked to her house. It was a good 30-minute walk. As they walked, Sakura couldn't help but look up at Naruto's calm, stoic face. He was actually quite handsome, and Sakura knew that if she hadn't been so obsessed over Sasuke when he was alive, she probably would have been quite attracted to Naruto while they were in the academy. Though part of her was glad she wasn't back then, because she knew if she had had a silly schoolgirl with a crush like she had been with Sasuke, she wouldn't have been able to put her ridiculous behavior aside and help him like she was now. Smiling to herself, she looked back down at the ground, slightly tightening her grip. Naruto glanced at her from the corner of his eye before turning his gaze back forwards. In time they reached her house. Naruto walked her up the stairs and stood at the doorway as she reached for the doorknob. But just before she could grab it, the door opened and none other than Takashi Hanabi stood there waiting. Naruto went a couple of steps down, not want to get into a confrontation with since his last one, he'd been a veil to avoid. Naruto leaned against the railing of the bridge, his arms and ankles crossed. Sakura was next to him sitting on the railing looking at the water. Their newest member Hanabi was across from them cross-legged on the bridge. Is Kakashi-sensei always this late? He asked. Yeah, pretty much, said Sakura, not looking from the water. Naruto nodded in agreement, not looking at him. Hanabi let out a sigh looking back down at his lap. He'd been trying all morning to connect with his team. The beating he took the day before showed just how far behind he really was. They had worked completely together, all without saying a single word to one another. He sighed again. Naruto was watching Hanabi from under his bangs. He watched as he took out a kunai and a whetstone and started to sharpen it. He snatched his hand back and stuck his thumb in his mouth. He'd cut himself. The boy was terrible. When he had first arrived today, Naruto had had every intention of telling him he wasn't wanted and to go away. But something had held him back. He had been the same way once. Flashback. But there are 3 of us, that's what you said, yelled Naruto from where he was tied to a post. We're all on this squad and we're all in it together, said Sasuke, his look of defiance ever present. End flashback. A small smile played on his lips. Dead for half a year, thought Naruto, and still showing me up. Naruto had been tied to a post and his team had been told not to feed him. Yet Sasuke knew they would need to work as a team, and if Naruto was hungry it would hurt the team. The same was true here. Hanabi was weak and behind, that hurt the team. He had to do something. He straightened and walked over to the boy and knelt down in front of him. Hanabi looked at him curiously. Naruto picked up his abandoned kunai and whetstone. Here, he said, when you're sharpening a kunai, hold the whetstone like this. He showed him the proper grip. That way you don't have to worry about cutting yourself. Hanabi stared at him. Don't look at me, try it. Hanabi took the kunai and whetstone from Naruto and gripped it that he had showed him and started to sharpen the blade. He smiled as he continued. Sakura couldn't help but smile as she watched over her shoulder. Naruto was opening up. It was so nice to see him open up to someone besides her. Last night she'd lain on her bed for hours thinking about the small kiss she had given him. It had taken a lot of courage on her part, but that small gesture of the caring she had for him had seemed to help him a little bit. This morning when they had met at the bridge, he had given her a small smile. She was brought out of her musing by Kakashi walking on the bridge. "Hey," he said. Sakura let out a sigh. "You're late again, Kakashi-sensei," she said. "Sorry about a black cat crossed my path so I had to take the long way," he said. Sakura shook her head. Did he even realize he used the same 4 excuses over and over? "I'm sure you did," she said, not feeling like arguing and ruining her good mood. "Well, let's get going," said Kakashi, turning towards the Hokage tower. Hanabi put his kunai and whetstone away and made to get up. Yet he saw a hand palm up being held out to him. He followed the arm and saw Naruto looking down at him. With a small grin, Hanabi took his hand and let him pull him to his feet. Sakura had to smile again. Naruto was getting there, but he truly wasn't there yet. But it's a long road to a healed heart, and Sakura would be there for him, every step of the way. After their last mission yesterday, which had been a simple delivery run to a neighboring village that had taken a grand total of 6 hours, Kakashi told them to meet at Training Field 7. And now he was late. Naruto let out another sigh, causing Sakura to look up at him from where she was sitting right below him reading a scroll on Genjutsu that she had gotten from Kurenai. "What's wrong, Naruto?" she asked, a curious look on her face. "You've been sighing an awful lot." "It's Kakashi-sensei," said Naruto. "I just wish he could be on time for once." Sakura nodded her head in agreement. "Why do you think he's late all the time anyway?" asked Hanabi from his spot in the middle of the field. "Who knows," said Naruto. "He's done it since we've known him. I think it's because of Obito and Rin though." As if on cue, Kakashi casually walked into the field waving in greeting. "You're late," 2 of them chorused, not loudly, Naruto staying silent. Kakashi let out a small laugh, nervously rubbing the back of his head. After regaining his composure, Kakashi addressed them as a team. "I've actually called you all to discuss an important matter. The Chunin exams are approaching and I've nominated the 3 of you." 3 Genin stared at him for a minute. "Wait, what kind of exam?" asked Hanabi, knowing if he had to fight, he would be hard-pressed to win. "I'm not allowed to disclose the details," said Kakashi. Then he took out 3 sheets of paper and handed them to his students. "These are the applications, file them out and meet at the academy tomorrow if you wish to participate." With that he left the 3 young ninja. Naruto stared at the paper for a minute before jumping to the ground. He was definitely entering. It would be a good opportunity for him to test his skills. He walked out of the clearing heading for the main square of the village, his teammate flanking him. As they walked, they stumbled across a male-female pair of ninja they didn't recognize. The male was in a black jumpsuit wearing a ridiculous cat-eared hood, makeup, and had something wrapped in bandages on his back. The female wore a simple dress with a large battle fan strapped to her back. The male had a child by the collar holding the boy off the ground. Naruto recognized the boy, Konohamaru. The look on the mystery ninja's face did spell good news for Konohamaru. Naruto decided it would be best to intervene. "Put him down," he said, not drawing his hands out of his pockets. "What?" said the ninja. "You got a problem too, punk?" "I do," said Naruto. "I have a problem with you harassing the people of my village." He let out a key that made the 2 immediately freeze. It even scared Sakura. Naruto glanced at the boy's forehead. "Sand ninja. You are clearly here to take part in the up-and-coming Chunin exams. It would be a shame if I had to have you expelled from the village for disturbing the peace." "Kankuro," said dark voice from somewhere to Naruto's right, "put him down, you're embarrassing yourself and our village." A young man stood in the underside of a tree branch, his arms crossed and a large gourd on his back. The boy in black seemed to get scared suddenly and dropped Konohamaru. "Usher Gaara," he stuttered. The boy Gaara turned to Naruto. "I apologize for his behavior," he said in a monotone voice. Naruto stared at him. "It's alright, no harm was done. Gaara, I presume. I noticed the look in your eyes. We are the same." Having said that, Naruto, Sakura, Hanabi and Konohamaru all left the sand ninja to themselves. Gaara was slightly shocked but did not show it. As they walked, Naruto thought about the boy named Gaara. There was something about him. He knew they had the same pained look in their eyes, but how? Deciding that he was reading too much into it, Naruto decided to just banish the thought. He had an exam to focus on and he couldn't afford distractions right now. Later, Naruto stood outside the academy, his hands in his pockets. He had arrived 30 minutes early to ensure he wouldn't miss his chance. After waiting about 10 minutes, the rest of his team showed up. They handed the applications to the two Chunin sitting at a booth outside. "Head upstairs, 3rd floor, room 305, one of them said. Naruto nodded and then, with his team flanking him on either side, he entered the academy. He walked up the stairs and to the 3rd floor, where he found and entered room 305. The room was packed, and in the front stood the rest of the Rookie 9. Naruto walked over and stood next to them, his hands still deep in his pockets. "Hey Naruto," said Choji as he approached. Naruto inclined his head in greeting and stared out amongst the rest of the ninja. There were genin from all over the land, grass, sand, rain. There were even 3 ninja with music notes on their headbands. Naruto locked eyes with one of them, a man who had most of his face covered in bandages. They stared at each other for a minute. Sakura glanced nervously at Naruto and then looked at Hanabi, who was watching Naruto. Then surprisingly, the man with the music note on his forehead broke the eye contact. A ghost of a smile crossed Naruto's face as he glanced at the rest of the rookies. Some of them were looking at him with stunned looks. Naruto gave them a sinister blast of ki to scare them, which he could have sworn one pissed himself, then turning to look at the examiner that just entered the room. "All right, you scum," said Ibiki. "Everyone take a number from the box the examiner is passing around, then take your assigned seating." Naruto drew number 19D. He walked up to row 19 and sat in the 4 seats. To his left was a grass ninja and to his right was Hinata. They passed out the tests. "You have 1 hour," said the examiner. "No cheating. If you are caught 2 times, your entire team will fail. Begin." Naruto flipped over his paper and saw a 9-question test. The 10th question will be given with 10 minutes left. Naruto stared at it for a minute. "Great, all the skills I've picked up and I still suck at taking tests," he thought. He sat in his chair trying to think of a way to figure this out. There was no way he could answer any of the questions, they were just way over his head. He was gonna have to cheat, so silently activated his Sharingan without anyone noticing. He started subtlety scanning the room for potential candidates. Through a sheer stroke of luck, the man right in front of him was writing like a man possessed. Pretending to cover his face, Naruto had been training for the last 6 months with Kakashi in using Sharingan. It was time to put that training to at least some use. For the first time since the death of Sasuke, the Sharingan of Naruto Uzumaki opened. Sakura scanned the test, and glanced at Naruto, who was staring blankly at his test. This was bad, though his battle prowess and jutsu skills had increased by leaps and bounds since Sasuke's death. But his intellectual and deductive reasoning skills hadn't improved at all. She wasn't going to have a problem and Hanabi should be okay. Though he wasn't a very good fighter, Hanabi was actually quite smart. Sakura watched Naruto be still for a long time before finally moving. He scratched the bandaged side of his face, then started writing. Her fears laid to rest for the time being, Sakura turned to her own test. "I hit a gold mine with this guy," thought Naruto as he copied the answer for the 5th question. In a matter of 20 minutes, Naruto had the entire test filled out and finished. They had 5 minutes until the 10th question was given. Naruto disactivated the Sharingan and sat back in his seat with his arms crossed. People around him were starting to finish. As he glanced around, he realized that there was a significantly fewer amount of people. He'd been so focused on copying the man's movements he hadn't noticed people being removed. "Alright, listen up," said the proctor. "It's time for the 10th question." Naruto looked up at the proctor, trying to read him. He hadn't been able to for the entire exam. It was starting to wear on his nerves. But before we reveal the 10th question, there are a few rules. Rule number 1. Each of you will have the choice whether or not to take the final question. There was a collective gasp from the students. However, should you choose not to take it, you will get a 0 on the test and automatically fail, and in extension, your entire team will. Rule 2. If you do decide to take the final question and do not answer correctly, you will be barred from taking the Chunin exams ever again. Gasp wasn't the correct word this time. It was more like a scream of terror. Naruto watched as student after student raised their hands, backing out. Naruto glanced at Hanabi, who was shaking, nervous as hell. Naruto closed his eyes. Go ahead, Hanabi, come and raise your hand. The proctor thought Hanabi's hand twitched but he kept his arm down. Alright then, here we go. The proctor glanced over the class one more time. Alright then, if that's everyone, I only have one thing left to say. He paused as he glanced around. Naruto's right hand twitched, ready to pull the bandage from his eye. Congratulations, on passing the first exam. Naruto almost fell out of his chair, the guy next to him actually did. Hold on, yelled Sakura, jumping to her feet. What do you mean? Where is the 10th question? There is no 10th question, not a written one at least, he smiled. In fact, your answer to stay was the correct answer. Naruto crossed his arms and slumped in his seat. Unbelievable, he said, smirking and shaking his head. Then what was the point of the other 9 questions? Demanded a blonde-haired girl wearing a sand headband around her neck. Were they completely pointless? Not all, said Ibiki. In truth, they served a very important task. They were to test your ability to gather intel under the most dire of circumstances. Naruto could only shake his head. As I'm sure you realized, the questions were far too advanced for any genin to answer. The test was designed to encourage cheating, in fact, it practically demanded it. However, you had to have someone to copy off of. So I had 2 chunin who already knew the answers sit in with you. Naruto watched as the boy he'd been copying raised his hand. Okay, but what was the point of the 10th question? Asked the blonde girl. The 10th question was the whole point of the exam. You had 2 choices, neither one very pleasant. You could either choose not to take it and whole team would fail, or you could take it and run the risk of losing your chance to ever be chunin. It was a no-win situation. But with your choices to take it, you have shown your ability to put the mission before yourself. The first exam is over. See through deception, said Naruto, shaking his head. Then the widow to his left shattered. A sort of ball flew in through the window. 2 kunai with ropes tied to them embedded themselves in the ceiling. A woman with purple hair and a tan coat stood in front of the newly erected curtain. Alright, boys and girls, you ready for the second test? She yelled. Good. Then follow me. No one moved. Okay, Naruto said with a raised eyebrow. You're early, came Ibiki's voice from behind the curtain, again. She faltered. Then Ibiki stepped around the curtain and the 2 shared word in whispers that Naruto didn't catch. Alright, meet me tomorrow at the 44th Battle Training Zone at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, the woman said, dismissed. Naruto stood up from his seat and exited the room, his hands tucked in his pockets. He walked down to the ground floor and exited the building, headed for home. His teammates soon joined him. Hey Naruto, said Hanabi, walking up on his right. How many questions did you answer? I could only get 5. Naruto smiled. I got them all, said Naruto. Sakura gave him a weird look before a look of understanding crossed her face. Gave her a faint smile before looking forward again and continuing on his journey home. I'll see you guys tomorrow, said Hanabi and leapt off. Would you like me to walk you home? Asked Naruto, looking back at Sakura. Sakura shook her head. Actually, I thought I'd visit with you for a while, she said. My parents are out of the village on business and won't be returning for a week. Naruto nodded his head and turned toward his house. They reached his house in short time and soon found themselves sitting on his couch. Though he'd intended to stay up and talk with Sakura for a while, Naruto found himself growing very drowsy very quickly. In a matter of minute, his head was cradled in Sakura's lap and he was fast asleep. The next morning Naruto woke in his bed, a petite form curled against him under the covers. He gave a genuine smile and lifted himself up a bit and looked around. His clock read 6 o'clock. They had an hour and a half to get the 44th battle training ground. He gently shook Sakura awake and watched as her beautiful green eyes fluttered open. Sakura, we gotta get up, he said. She stretched her whole body against him. He felt his face heat up slightly. After she got off the couch, Naruto sat up and put his face in his hands, rubbing it vigorously, trying to wake up. Then he stood up and followed her out of the house. They ran to the training ground and made it with a half-hour to spare. Hanabi was already there waiting for them. About time you 2 decide to show up, he said, giving them a smirk. Yeah, sorry about that, said Sakura, rubbing the back of her head. Kinda overslept. Hanabi gave them a knowing look before turning to face the forest. So this is where we're taking the next exam, he he said looking up at the looming trees. Should be pretty interesting. Naruto followed his gaze into the trees. They looked ominous and he couldn't help but agree, it did look like it was going to be interesting. Movement to his right caught his attention and he turned to see Shikamaru and his team approaching them, followed by the other 3 rookies. Soon the rookie 9 were standing together in a small mob and at the head stood Naruto. They were outcasts here, having only been genin for a short time. Even most of the Leaf genin looked on them with partial disgust. The only ones who weren't were 3 in the far back. 2 boys and a girl, Team Guy, led by the child prodigy Neji Hyuga. Naruto turned to face his own team and the rest of the 9, forming a small circle. So looks like we're all still in it, said Kiba glancing around. Yup, said Choji smiling. What do you suppose the next task will be? Asked Hinata's shy voice. None of the others got a chance to answer because at that very moment the second exam proctor showed up. Alright you maggots, she yelled, it's time for the second exam to begin. Each team will receive either a heaven scroll or an earth scroll. The objective is to enter the training ground, and make your way to the tower located in the middle. However, before you can enter the tower you must first obtain both scrolls. You have 5 days. Naruto's eyebrow raised a bit and said, so Snake Woman, we only have to take a scroll from a weakling, sounds easy. Instantly a kunai was thrown at him. He caught it with 2 fingers, the blade between them, before it cut his cheek, making everyone gasp. Naruto said, your attack is slow proctor. It thought you would be better, Gaze, my assumptions were wrong. She was shocked. No genin could have that kind of skill. She then continued as if nothing happened. Before we can proceed, each team must enter the booth. Confirm you are allowed to partake in the exam and receive your scroll. Naruto turned to his team and indicated for them to follow. Then as a team they walked into the booth. Names, said the Chunin sitting behind the table. Sakura Hirano, said Sakura. The Chunin scanned the list and found her name. He checked her off. Hanabi Mara, said Hanabi. The Chunin checked his name off. Naruto Uzumaki, said Naruto. The Chunin did a double take, eyeing Naruto up, then he checked his name off. Naruto picked up the heaven scroll that was set in front of him and drew his a number out of the box. They drew gate 13. They exited the booth and walked away from the rest of the candidates. Once at their gate, the 3 started to discuss strategy. Naruto, said Sakura, who should lead the team. Naruto was quiet for a bit. I should. Sakura, I am a natural leader. Don't worry, I will not let another precious person die because I was weak, said Naruto. Hanabi, no offense, but you've got a bit of a confidence problem. Naruto turned around to face the gate. She stared at his back, his hand tucked in his pockets, but he still stood as straight up as ever. The pride he had in himself hadn't changed. For a second she remembered Sasuke and the way he carried himself. They had been more alike than they knew, but Sakura had always been looking at them from the outside, so it was easy for her to see. She was sure Kakashi saw it too. Alright, get ready, said the Chunin at the gate. Naruto stepped up to the gate. Sakura and Hanabi stepped up to flank him. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The Chunin counted down, go. The gate swung open and the 3 raced in. Naruto took the lead and leapt into the trees, the others hot on his heels. They raced through the trees for an hour before coming to a stop in a small clearing. Alright, how are we gonna go about finding Earth Scroll? Asked Hanabi. We can't split up, but we'll lose time if we just wander around aimlessly, said Naruto. So for now we continue to head for the tower. Sakura and Hanabi nodded and leapt off to follow their leader. However, they hadn't gone 300 yards when Naruto turned around and put on a burst of speed and tackled Sakura out of the sky. A kunai flew overhead and Hanabi caught a branch and flipped up on top of it, drawing his own kunai. Naruto landed with Sakura in his arms, holding her bridal style. Thanks Naruto, she said as he put her down. He nodded and looked off into the direction the kunai had come from. 3 ninja from the grass village stood in a tree 60 feet away, squaring off against Hanabi. Hanabi leapt into the air and threw his blade. The 3 scattered. Naruto and Sakura used the distraction to leap back into the fight. Naruto slipped of his pack and flipped it open. He pulled out a crescent-bladed-like object and threw it to Hanabi, who caught it and landed on a nearby branch, blocking a shuriken with the blade. Then he spun the blade once. 3 identical blades sprang forth. Hanabi was holding the weapon of Sasuke Uchiha, the Demon Wind Shuriken. The attacking ninja all threw multiple shuriken and kunai at Hanabi, who started spinning the shuriken. The incoming blades were deflected. Then Hanabi threw the spin blade at the three ninja. They all leapt out the way. Hanabi leapt in pursuit of one. Sakura stopped the ninja pursuing Hanabi with a hard kick to the head. Naruto jumped after the third. Hanabi landed in front of the ninja he'd pursued, another kunai in his hand. The grass ninja drew his sword and attacked Hanabi. Hanabi sidestepped the attack, plunged the kunai through his hand, pinning him to the tree. Then Hanabi stuck his hand out and caught the demon wind on its return path. Continuing its rotation, he passed the blades through his neck, severing his head from his shoulders. Sakura landed in a crouch and launched herself at the grass ninja. She punched him in the face and followed up with a knee to his stomach. Then she drew a kunai and he drew his sword. She attacked him with a stab which he dodged and trapped her arm between his body and his arm. He tried to cut off her head, but she dropped down and grabbed his leg. She pulled it out from under him. He lost his balance and fell from the tree. Sakura dove after him, her blade held in a reverse grip. They both crashed to the ground. Her blade pierced his chest and heart. Naruto and his opponent face each other, neither moving, neither breathing. The grass ninja twitched. Naruto started his hand signs. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. He breathed the huge flame at the grass ninja, who dropped of the tree branch and fell to the ground. Naruto dropped down after him, drawing his two kunai off his hips, holding them in reverse grips. They landed on the ground and the grass ninja ran at Naruto. He delivered an over-the-head slash intent on cleaving Naruto in two. Naruto blocked the blade with his kunai. Then he shoved the ninja away and took up the ground. He delivered stabs through each of the man's biceps, then plunged the blades into his thighs. The man screamed in pain. Naruto ripped one blade out and drove for the man's chin. The enemy ninja caught Naruto's wrist and tried to hold off his attack. Naruto put the palm of his other hand on the end of the kunai and pushed up. The two struggled against one another, but the man's wounded arms quickly gave out. Naruto drove the kunai through the man's bottom jaw and into the roof of his mouth, and then the blade pierced his brain. The man suffered the most unbearable pain known possible, then he died. Naruto wrenched the blade free and kicked the corpse over. He turned to look at his other teammates. They were both fine. Hanabi had the demon wind in his hand and was in the process of wiping it clean. The other two enemies were dead. Hanabi collapsed the demon wind and tried to hand it back to Naruto. Naruto shook his head. "Keep it," he said, "you seem to have a natural talent for it. I can't think of a better person to carry Sasuke's shuriken." Hanabi and Sakura shared a look of amazement. Naruto was parting with something of Sasuke's. Not many people knew it, but Naruto had the headband he'd gotten from Iruka in a drawer at home. Since his death, Naruto had been wearing Sasuke's headband, as a tribute to his dead friend. Now he was giving Hanabi the demon wind, the weapon Sasuke had used to fight the rogue ninja, Zabuza. "Come on," he said, "let's search them for the scroll." They searched the bodies for a couple minutes before Hanabi found it on the man he'd killed. "It's a heaven scroll," he said. He tossed it into the bushes. Naruto and Sakura converged on him. "It's getting late," said Sakura. "Let's find somewhere to campo for the night." The other two nodded and they began to search. After looking for half an hour, they found a deep cave that had a natural bend in it, which meant they could make a fire. Hardened a bit, they head inside and started to erect a camp. Sakura set up the tent, while Hanabi and Naruto collected firewood. In no time at all they had a small fire going, and were eating some rations that Hanabi had had. Naruto volunteered for the first watch, and while the others slept he sat at the mouth of the cave. His thoughts, as they always did, drifted to the time he'd spent with Sasuke. The tree climbing, their fight with Zabuza, the demon brothers, everything. It had been annoying to see Sasuke outclass him at every turn, but at the same time it had inspired him to try even harder. The bond of friendship and brotherhood that had been forming between them was like something he'd never felt before. But then his thoughts drifted to Hanabi. They were growing closer to one another. He'd meant what he'd said about the demon wind. He'd wanted Hanabi to keep it. Hanabi would never replace Sasuke. Hanabi knew this, Naruto knew it, Sakura knew it. But Hanabi had earned his own spot on Team 7. They were now a four-man squad. The spirit of Sasuke as the guardian angel, always looking over them and guiding, showing Naruto the path to the title of Hokage, just like he'd said. It was that line of thinking that caused Naruto to remember his other startling discovery. Flashback. "Come on Naruto," said Kakashi, "just relax and watch my hands." Naruto took in a deep breath and opened his eyes watching Kakashi. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. Kakashi let the huge ball of fire fly into the air. "Now follow me this time," he said. Naruto cleared his mind and let his instincts take over just like Kakashi had instructed. Fire style. Fireball jutsu, they said as one. Naruto's was as big as Kakashi's, causing the Junin to gasp. "Amazing," he said. "What?" asked Naruto. "It would seem that not only did Sasuke give you Sharingan, but the Uchiha's unparalleled control of fire jutsu as well. The Nine Tails seems to have adapted your body to use Sasuke's DNA." Naruto let out a gasp. "What does that mean?" he asked, suddenly slightly afraid. "Don't worry, you're still you," said Kakashi. "You just have a little bit of Uchiha blood in you now." End flashback. Since then Naruto had been improving on his fire jutsu, and he was getting quite good at it. He was working on a few others that he had yet to perfect. All in all, his skill in ninjutsu was improving, and that to very good taijutsu, and you had yourself a pretty good ninja. He wanted to learn genjutsu, and Kakashi said he would be able to learn a little as he got better with Sharingan. But he wasn't a genjutsu type, so the genjutsu he could learn would be very limited unless he was using the Sharingan. A few hours later Hanabi relieved Naruto so he could get some sleep as well. Naruto walked deeper into the cave and entered the tent to find Sakura sleeping comfortably in her bedroll. Naruto slipped into his, which was to her right, and laid on his back with his hands crossed under his head. Sakura rolled over and curled up against him, resting her head on his chest. Naruto, focusing on her presence, slowly drifted off. When he awoke again, Sakura's warm body was gone. He sat up and looked around the tent. Sakura was gone, but Hanabi was there, sleeping with his back to Naruto. Naruto brushed the top of his bedroll off his legs and left the tent. Once outside he stretched and made his way to the tent entrance. Sakura was sitting there on watch. She turned to look at him as he approached. "What time is it?" he asked her. "Almost dawn," she replied. "We should probably get moving." Naruto nodded and went back into the tent, where he woke up Hanabi, and together they collapsed the tent and put it back in Sakura's pack. Naruto carried her pack out to her as he threw his own across his back. Hanabi's pack seemed to have vanished. "Hanabi, where's your pack?" asked Naruto. "Don't have it anymore," answered Hanabi. "I didn't have anything else in it, so I made it into this." He held up and sort of carrier, and Naruto saw that the demon wind was in it, the ring sticking out the top for quick access. "Ah, I see," said Naruto, impressed. "Well, we better get moving." They leapt into the trees. Little did they know that they were being followed. Meanwhile, Dosu, Kin, and Zaku watched their targets leap into the air and off into the trees. Lord Orochimaru had said to target them, to test their might. He had something planned for the village and waited to see how well the genin in the village were being trained. Kakashi's Team 7 had the most promising candidates in the year batch of rookies, so they were the targets. They'd been watching them all night, trying to see if they could find a weakness to exploit, but so far they had found nothing. So they would trail them, and wait for the right moment to strike. Meanwhile, Naruto, Sakura, and Hanabi had been on the move all day and were nearing the tower. They were currently taking a break by a river. Naruto knelt on its bank, washing his face in the cool stream, when he felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. He searched his surroundings for danger but couldn't find any. Thinking that maybe it was just fatigue, he decided to let it go for the time being. He returned to his teammates, who were currently trying to devise a way to obtain an Earth Scroll. It was then that Naruto saw them. Sitting in a tree 50 yards behind them were the enemy ninja. Careful as to not give away that he was aware of their presence, he walked to his teammates and knelt down next to them. "We're being watched," he whispered. "Don't react." But there are 3 enemy ninja 50 yards directly behind Hanabi. The other continued to act as if he had said nothing, but where they were drawing a map of the surrounding area, they both drew check marks, indicating that they understood. The attack would have been fatal, had the 3 not already been aware it was coming. The lead man, a man wrapped almost completely in bandages, landed where they were drawing their map. The 3-leaf ninja dove towards the river and rolled to their feet, weapons in hand. Naruto had his 2 kunai, Hanabi wielded the demon wind, and Sakura had a kunai in her hand. "So," said the mummy man, You were aware of our presence all this time? What if we were? Countered Hanabi. The mummy man was joined by two others, a man with spiky hair and a lean woman. All three wore headbands with musical notes on them. I'm curious, said the mummy, what kind of scroll do you carry? You see, we carry this earth scroll. He held up the earth scroll. Their reactions gave them away. Ah. So you need this earth scroll, to go with the heaven scroll you carry. How about a deal? We both lay our scrolls on the ground, and then we fight. Whoever wins, get to take both scrolls with them. Naruto wanted to accept. An earth scroll had fell right into their laps, but if the man was revealing what kind of scroll he had, it could only mean that he was confident in his and his teammates' chances of winning. But they really didn't have any choice. I'll take your deal, said Naruto and pulled the heaven scroll out of his pack. He set it on the ground next to the mummy man's scroll and leapt back to his team. Okay, guys, he said, any ideas? Yeah, I've got one, said Sakura, but I'm going to need time, 2 or 3 minutes at least. In the world of a ninja, 2 minutes was a lifetime, 3, an eternity. Naruto nodded. Alright Hanabi, and I will keep them busy, said Naruto. Hanabi nodded in agreement and started to spin the demon wind. Sakura leapt back a ways and started making hand signs. Naruto sheathed his 2 knives and started his hand signs. Too late, yelled the spiky-haired man. He held up his hands and a wall of air rushed at Naruto. Naruto finished just in time. Fire style. Great fireball jutsu. He launched the mass of flames at the wall of air. They clashed in the shock wave, causing everyone to shield their face, all but Sakura, who was too far back. When Naruto and his opponents recovered, they all noticed Hanabi was gone. Naruto feared the worst, however his fears were quickly put to rest when he saw a loud yell. He looked up and saw Hanabi spin his body over using his own momentum to put even more force into the throw, just as Sasuke had while fighting Zabuza. The demon wind flew at the ninja with blinding speed, but the mummy man pulled up his sleeve and revealed a strange-look gauntlet with holes in it. He blocked the large shuriken with it. Hanabi caught it as it flew back at him. He hit the ground and collapsed, blocking the strike the mummy had aimed at him. They stood still, eye each other down when Hanabi gasped and fell to one knee, blood running out of his left ear. Naruto was on the moving, drawing his 2 kunai. He kicked the mummy man in the face, sending him flying backward, and then deflected 2 throwing needles that the girl had thrown. Hanabi was on his feet and running the spiky-haired guy, only to have a wall of air hit him in the face. Naruto turned to help him, but was cut off by the girl. The mummy soon got to his feet and was running towards him. Come on Sakura, he thought. It was in that moment that the 2 attacking Naruto stopped altogether. The spiky-haired guy was still blasting Hanabi with a massive wall of air, pinning him to the ground. Naruto dodged around the girl, who now had her hands around her own throat, and ran up behind the guy. He slid under his arms and drove both kunai into his arms, at the elbows. He screamed in pain. Hanabi kicked him in the face. He crashed to the ground, unconscious. Naruto turned to look at Sakura, who was on her hands and knees breathing very hard. So, that's what she was doing, he thought, genjutsu. He looked back at the mummy man and the girl. The girl was on the ground, she'd strangled herself to unconsciousness. The mummy man was on his knees gasping for air. He must have been able to hold out long enough for Sakura's jutsu to wear off. You are indeed powerful, and we underestimated you, said the mummy man. The earth scroll is yours. Please let us go. Naruto picked up the 2 scrolls and turned towards his fallen foes. Be gone, he said. Thank you, until we meet again. He stood up and carried of both off his teammates. Naruto quickly joined Hanabi at Sakura's side. Sakura, that was amazing, he said. I'm still trying to get the hang of it, she said. It take a lot of my chakra and I can't hold it for long. It's okay, said Naruto. You held it long enough for what we needed. Look, he held out the 2 scrolls. We've got both scrolls. Let's rest here tonight and head for the tower in the morning. No one disagreed. Later, Naruto, Sakura and Hanabi gazed up at the tower as they walked inside. It wasn't as large as Naruto had expected up, it was a descent size. They stepped into the room labeled 13 and closed the door behind them. It had taken most of the day to reach the tower, so there were still 3 nights and 2 days until the test ended. They would be here for a while. They started searching the room when Sakura found a large poster on the wall. After reading it, she turned to her 2 teammates. I think we have to open the scrolls now, she said. The other two looked at her curiously for a second before following her orders. Hanabi and Naruto each took out a scroll and opened it. They started to smoke, so the two threw them away, drawing their weapons. When the smoke cleared, Iruka-sensei stood in front of them. "Congratulations on passing the second exam," he said. "Iruka-sensei?" asked Naruto. "That's right," said his old sensei. "Why are you here?" asked Sakura. "Well, I'm here to explain the exam," he said. "And what it means to be Chunin. You see, a Chunin is a leader. The exam demanded teamwork, and it was up to the leader to get their team to work together as a cohesive unit. Secondly, it pitted you against the other. The team had to decide who to approach each obstacle. Only through teamwork could this exam be completed." After his explanation of the exam, Iruka asked them about the challenges they had faced in the forest before finally wishing them good luck on the next exam. The next 2 days passed slowly, but it gave them time to replenish what chakra they had used in the forest. After the time limit was up, the door in the back of the room opened. This led into a hallway where the rest of the qualifying team were. They all followed the hall into a huge room. On an elevated platform stood each sensei of the remaining teams, the second exam proctor, and the third Hokage. "Alright, each team line up in single file," said the exam proctor. After lining up, the Hokage spoke. "First off, I'd like to congratulate each and every one of you on reaching the third exam," he said. As he spoke, Naruto glanced around. Shikamaru and his team made it, Kiba and the others too. The team from the Sand Village, and the Sound team that had fought Naruto and his team. And 2 other Leaf teams, one was Team Guy and the other had no one that Naruto recognized. Each person looked rather strange, and silver-haired man with glasses was in the front. "Now, the Hokage, it's time to—" He was interrupted by another Leaf ninja dropping from the roof. "Lord Hokage," he said, "as proctor for the third exam, I, Hayate Gecko, wish to address them." "Very well," said the Hokage. Hayate turned to them. "Hello everyone," he said. "Before we can begin the third exam, we have to have a set of preliminary bouts." "What the hell for?" demanded Kiba. "Frankly speaking," said the proctor, "we didn't expect this many of you to make it. We must thin down your numbers. Before we do, however, is there any among you who wish to end it here?" The man in glasses raised his hand. "Alright, you got me, I'm out," he said. "Kabuto Yakshi," said the second exam proctor. "Very well," said Hayate, "if that is it, then the prelims begin right now." A screen high in the wall began to randomly go through names. It ended on Hanabi and one of the Leaf ninja dressed in purple. The other went up to the catwalks on either end of the room. Only Hanabi and his opponent remained. It was time for the third exams to begin. Hanabi was looking at the creepy guy across from him, and to say Hanabi was nervous would have been a gross understatement. He wanted to run. Run and keep running. The only thing that kept him there was the feeling of his 2 teammates and captain's eyes on him. He wanted to be strong, make them proud, but this guy looked unlike anything he'd ever fought. It was intimidating, and a little scary. Hanabi was going to raise his hand to give up, but he glanced up at Naruto, whose face was a look of disgust. Hanabi stopped running. Even if wasn't ready for this, he vowed that he would never give up or chicken out ever again. Naruto knew that. Hanabi's close combat skills had improved during the 2 months he'd been with Sakura and Naruto, but not by much. He had the Demon Wind Shuriken he gave him, so that would help a bit, but he still wasn't a very good fighter. Hanabi wanted to prove himself, so this was going to be interesting. Naruto watched as the two squared off, eyeing each other, waiting for the other to make a move. The black-eyed man's fingers twitched. Hanabi whipped the Demon Wind off his back, drawing and opening it up in a single move. He threw the large weapon at his opponent and raced at him, drawing a kunai. "Black eyes, don't you have any other tricks?" asked the man as he leapt over it. Hanabi gritted his teeth. "I have to do it," he thought, "but I'm still not very good at it. I could mess up." Just as he decided not to do it, a scene flashed through his mind. Flashback. Hanabi ran through the woods, the enemy ninja hot on his trail. This was not good. He couldn't get away. His toe caught a rock, and with a cry of pain he fell to the ground. He turned over and gazed at the ninja in fear. Snapping his eyes back open, he saw a person standing in front of him in a blood-red shirt and shaggy blonde hair. "Naruto, I lost again, didn't I?" he said, stunned. Naruto looked at Hanabi with disgust in his eyes. Naruto said, "If you give up and hesitate, you will die. There won't always be someone there to protect you. Also, you could get a comrade killed. Hanabi, you are ninja. In wearing the headband on your forehead you've accepted the mantle of the Hidden Leaf Village, said Naruto. You and I are genin, the future of our village. We don't have time to screw around and give the fuck up. We must advance and take the defense of our village onto our shoulders and help Kakashi-sensei. Never hesitate again. Even in training I won't be lenient again. I will kill you for giving up. End flashback. It didn't take a genius to know that Naruto had been thinking about the time he'd hesitated while fighting Haku with Sasuke. Hanabi's resolve hardened. He threw 2 smoke bombs and crossed his fingers. Then to everyone's disbelief 10 Hanabis poofed into existence. Shadow clones, said Naruto to Sakura when she gave him a look of confusion. Realization dawned on her and she looked back down at the match. The black-eyed man didn't seem to know what to do. He gazed around trying to find the real one. Having, said one. Some, said another one. Trouble? Said a third, but they said it in such quick succession it came out, having some trouble? Naruto watched as the clones converged on the man all wielding kunai. There was a massive cloud as the man destroyed some of them, but when it all cleared, Hanabi stood triumphant. Hayate walked over and knelt next to the man and checked him. The winner is Hanabi Mara, he said. Yes, yelled Sakura. Naruto nodded in approval as Hanabi looked up at them. He soon joined them on the catwalk looking tired but happy. Naruto turned to face him, a small smile playing on his lips. He congratulated him, which made Hanabi smile that he was finally making a friend of Naruto. They heard the board on the wall start to cycle through names again. They all turned to look at it. It ended on Zaku of the Sound Village and Shino Aburame. The two leapt to the floor. The guy Zaku looked up at Naruto and gave him a glare. His arms were in a sling. How does he plan to fight with his arms in a sling? Thought Hanabi aloud. Well, said Zaku, it looks like I've got a little movement in this one. He pulled his left arm out of the sling and pointed it at Shino. Shino didn't so much as draw his hands out of his jacket pockets. Without warning, Zaku blasted a huge sound wave at Shino. When the dust cleared, Shino stood tall, bugs covering his entire body. Gross, said Sakura. What is he? In the village hidden in the leaf there is a clan of bug masters, said Kakashi. The Aburame, when one of them is born they enter a secret pact with the insects. He provides them with a nest and food and in return they fight for him. A nest and food? Asked Hanabi. What do you mean? He gulped, having a good idea what Kakashi was talking about. His body and his chakra, said Kakashi. Though he did show it, Naruto wanted to throw up, the thought made him disgusted. Zaku was about to blast Shino again but his arms burst. He was screaming and he yelled, "How?" Shino just said, "I plugged your arms with bugs." Zaku then charged Shino but the insects flowed off Shino and swarmed Zaku. Naruto turned away and leaned on the rail, crossing his arms over his chest. "It's over," he said. No sooner than he finished, Zaku let out a terrible scream again as the bugs swarmed over him, devouring his chakra. Naruto knew he would never be able to use his arms again. That was so gross, said Sakura. Naruto gazed around and saw that was the general belief. Zaku was carted off by the medical corps. After a brief intermission, the board started cycling names again. It ended on the shinobi in the stupid cat-eared hood from the Sand Village and Hanabi's opponent's teammate. The Sand Ninja, Kankuro, took the large thing wrapped in bandages off his back, holding it out to his side. His opponent attacked him and threw a single punch which Kankuro easily blocked. Then the guy's arms snaked up Kankuro's. In no time at all the man had his limbs wrapped around Kankuro with one arm wrapped around his neck. "Oh man," said Sakura, "first a human bug hive, now this." Naruto could help but agree with her. There was a loud crack and Naruto knew Kankuro's neck had just broken. Hayate took a step forward like he was going to stop fight. Then Kankuro twitched, and head spun a 180. Hanabi made a retching sound. Then the thing Kankuro had dropped burst open, revealing a second Kankuro. The first Kankuro sprouted 4 more arms for a total of 6 and wrapped them tightly around his enemy. After a few seconds of struggling, the man gave and the match ended. "Geez," muttered Naruto, one weirdo after another. The board stopped the 2 names. Naruto glanced up at it. Not good, he thought. Ino and Sakura, despite what they said, the two still cared for each other. Sakura and Ino both seemed to freeze. They glanced at each other, seemed to hesitate, before the looks hardened. They joined each other on the ground, glaring at each other. "Alright," said Hayate, "you may begin." Sakura raced straight at Ino and threw a hard punch at her face. Ino dodged her head out of the way, but before she could counter, Sakura grabbed the back of her head and yanked it down at the same time, bringing her right knee up hard. Ino's head snapped back and she stumbled back, a look of shock on her face. Because Team 7 hadn't spent a lot of time around the rest of the rookies, Sakura's growth was wildly and unknown. So the look of shock on everyone's faces came as no surprise to Naruto as he glanced around, a small smirk on his face and a feeling of pride in his chest. Sakura kicked Ino hard in the gut. Ino backed up, clutching at her stomach. "How?" she gasped out. "How did you get so strong?" Sakura smirked. "How? It's called hard work, Ino. After the land of the waves, my total inability to do anything at all spurred me to get stronger, so that the next time we face an enemy I'll be a help, not being a liability." Sakura was about to pummel Ino again, but Ino spoke up. "Okay, Sakura, I give, you win." Naruto gave a huge smile. The smile was missed by all, but Kakashi, who. Naruto glanced at the rest of the rookies. They all had looks of amazement on their faces. It didn't surprise him. Ino was widely considered to be one of the best female ninja in their age group. However, Sakura had beaten her with minimal effort. Sakura held her hand out to Ino and helped her up. The two watched each other for a minute. Sakura gave her a smile, a real smile. "Just hang in there, Ino," she said. "If I can do it, so can you." Together they climbed the stairs and joined the rest of the Leaf Genin. Ino left to join her team and Sakura joined Naruto and Hanabi. "Well, 2 out of 3, said Kakashi. "We'll go for a sweep, be ready, Naruto." They all gave him a small smile. "Right," he said. Suddenly Sakura slumped against the wall and slid down into the ground. Naruto knelt next to her. "You okay?" he asked in a quiet voice. Sakura gave him a reassuring smile. "I'm okay," she said. "The chakra I used for the genjutsu in the forest hadn't fully replenished, I'm just tired." She gave him another tired smile, touched by his concern. Naruto nodded, returning her smile with a small one of his own. Before he stood up, he pulled her into a hug and quietly, so only she could hear, said, "I had faith in you, I knew you would win. Thank you for having faith in me and helping me through these past few months." That said, she was overwhelmed with pride and accomplishment in herself, but she felt something more towards Naruto. He then stood up and stepped back up the railing to watch the next match. The two opponents had already been chosen. Tenten and Temari. Tenten leapt away, and her team started cheering, loudly. Naruto had to cover his ears because of the mega eyebrows guys in green spandex. The two stood staring at each other. Temari goaded Tenten into attacking. Tenten leapt into the air and threw 6 shuriken at Temari. They flew straight in on target, then suddenly they stopped and dropped to the ground. Naruto blinked for a minute, then it dawned on him. "Wind," he thought. "It's over." Hanabi looked at him in shock. "How can you say that?" he demanded. "Tenten is a fellow Leaf Ninja. We must believe in her." Naruto looked at him. "Don't be stupid, Hanabi," he said. "I would like to see Tenten win. It's bad luck really. Temari is the one person so far who could actually beat her." "It's over, Hanabi, just watch." Temari unfurled her fan and swung it, causing a huge vortex that lifted Tenten into the air. Wind sliced at the helpless girl before she fell hard onto Temari's collapsed fan. "The winner is Temari," said Hayate. An evil grin crossed Temari's face. She tossed Tenten at the weapons she had used. Lee leapt into the battle area and caught her. "Nice catch," she said. "Now take that pathetic piece of garbage out of here." "What did you say?" he demanded. He gently set Tenten down and looked like he was about to charge the girl, when Naruto suddenly appeared in front of him, his arms stretched out in front of Lee. His gaze locked onto Temari. Everyone gasped. "When did he get so fast?" thought Sakura. "Naruto," thought Kakashi. "Where are you playing at?" "Lee, don't," said Naruto. "She's not worth your time. Take Tenten to Gai-sensei." Lee was stunned by Naruto's sudden appearance. Right," he said and carried her off. Naruto stood and glared at Temari. She broke eye contact and turned to join her teammates. Naruto followed Lee. Gaara had a very sadistic look on his face, thinking, "Now I really have a reason to kill him. Mother will love his blood, then she will love me." When they reached the top, Kakashi pulled Naruto aside. "Naruto, what are you doing?" he demanded. What do you mean? Asked Naruto confused. Your unknown growth is an advantage, he said. Why show it now in a rush to stop Lee? Naruto hesitated. Don't be so hasty to show off, wait until the match. Yes, sensei, Naruto said dejectedly. Kakashi gave him a one-eyed smile and patted him on the shoulder. I know you're eager to test yourself, he said gently, but don't let that eagerness compromise you. Naruto nodded and walked back to Hanabi a bit ashamed of himself. Everything alright? Asked Hanabi. Yeah, said Naruto quietly. Sakura stood up and joined them. You sure you're okay to be moving around, Sakura? She gave him a smile. I'm fine, she said. Besides, the matches are getting towards the end. I don't want to miss your match. She gave him a small smile and slipped her hand into his, and gave it a small squeeze. Sakura knew it was the only show of affection Naruto would allow right now. Shikamaru and Kin were the next two to fight. Their fight started off slow, but that was to be expected with anything involving Shikamaru. Kin threw two senbon at Shikamaru, who quickly dodged them. There were bells attached. That simple trick? Asked Naruto. Next shield threw senbon with bells and senbon without. Shikamaru started dodging all the senbon, before he suddenly froze. Genjutsu, said Sakura. What? Gasped Naruto, snapping his gaze up to Sakura. It looks like this is one that affects his ears, she said. I guess that's surprising considering what village she's from. Kin threw 3 senbon. Shikamaru managed to cover up just in time. It's amazing he can even move, she said. Suddenly all action stopped. Kin's face had a look of horror on it. He got her, said Naruto. Shikamaru pulled a shuriken out of his pouch, which was mirrored by Kin. Are you crazy? Demanded Kin. Oh come on, it's be fun, said Shikamaru. Like a game of chicken. Let's see whose ducks first. He threw the shuriken at her. The 2 shuriken raced at their targets. Just as it reached him, Shikamaru bent over backwards. Kin mirrored him, and bashed her head on the wall. The wise shinobi properly scouts the battlefield and is always aware of his position on it, he said. The match was over. After he joined the rest, the wall on the board began to cycle through names, until finally it landed on Naruto and Kiba. It's us against the kid Akamaru, shouted Kiba. He leapt down and ran to the far side waiting for Naruto. Naruto straightened and started walking towards the stairs. Kakashi stopped him. Naruto, he said, only use it as a last resort, but I'm giving you permission to use it. Naruto gave him a short nod and continued to the stairs. As he left, Sakura was giving Kakashi an uneasy look. All around them were words of pity for Naruto. Oh man, Naruto doesn't have a chance, said Ino. Kiba is so lucky, said Choji. And Kurenai looked pretty smug, like the match was already over. Don't worry Sakura, he smiled, he's ready. Naruto and I haven't just been goofing off the last 6 months. Hanabi was glancing back and forth between them, confused. He had faith in you, both of you. Now have faith in him. They both nodded and turned to watch. Now your chance, Naruto, she thought, show them all how much you've grown. Naruto stood across from Kiba, his face ever stoic. Sorry Naruto, he said, nothing personal. With that he dropped onto all fours, his teeth and fingernails elongating. Ninja art. Beast mimicry. He vanished only to reappear with his elbow buried deep in Naruto's gut. Naruto's body absorbed the shot and he flew several feet, landing hard on his back. Oh no, exclaimed Hanabi. In the 5 months he'd known him, Hanabi had never seen Naruto take a solid hit. Naruto was still for a second. Kida was about to turn to Hayate when he stirred. He turned back to Naruto, a look of disbelief on his face. There was a poof, and the real Naruto rose from the ground and was up and running, both kunai in his hand. Kiba let out a growl and charged at Naruto, drawing one of his own kunai. Naruto swung his right hand. Kiba ducked that kunai and stabbed with his own. Naruto blocked it with the kunai in his left. They disengaged. So, I see you picked up a little bit of ability, said Kiba. You came a long way since the academy. Naruto couldn't help but smirk as he sheathed his kunai. This didn't go missed by Kiba. You have no idea, said Naruto, how right you are. Naruto started flashing through hand signs so quickly that Kiba could keep up. Fire style. Phoenix flower jutsu, he yelled. What? Exclaimed Kiba. The 15 small fireballs converged on him. Kiba barely escaped. Asuma looked at Kakashi in shock. That move, he said, That's a fire jutsu of the Uchiha clan. So how is it that Naruto knows it? Kakashi gave him a one-eyed smile. Oh, you'll see, he replied. Kiba came up charging and drew 2 smoke bottoms. Let's go Akamaru, he said and threw the smoke bombs. No one could see a thing. Akamaru leapt into the smoke, using his nose to track Naruto. As the smoke started to clear, Kiba charged kunai in hand. Naruto! Yelled Sakura and moved to jump down. Stop Sakura, said Kakashi. Sakura was stunned. Kakashi had never raised his voice to her like that. Have faith in Naruto. Sakura climbed down off the railing. Just as the smoke completely cleared, Kiba was in Naruto's face and plunged the kunai in his stomach. Naruto! Sakura yelled again. A look of shock was on everyone's faces. Everyone in the building heard the distinct drip, drip, drip of water. A look of shock crossed Kiba's face as he watched water flow out of the wound in Naruto's stomach. Then the water clone collapsed. Kiba searched frantically for him. Where is he? He said aloud. His answer was a hard punch across the face. Kiba stumbled back. When the hell did you learn to use water clones, and fire and earth jutsu for that matter? Naruto smirked. I wouldn't worry about that right now if I were you, said Naruto. Fine, said Kiba. But at least tell me how you used the water clone. Fair enough, said Naruto. Kiba, look around you, at the water on the floor. It's left over from the dripping from the ceiling pipes. When you threw your smoke bombs, I simply used the little amount of water on the floor and created a water clone. Kiba growled, baring his fangs. Then he sprinted at Naruto. Tunneling Fang. He shouted and began to rapidly spin. Naruto stepped to the left. Kiba missed him. After finally being bored of this fight, Naruto finally punched Kiba, making him land to the side a bit. Kiba flipped out of his attack and stood tall with a pissed look in his face. I gotta say, he said, I'm actually impressed you're even still standing. Naruto glared at him, his cobalt eyes burning a hole in him. Kiba took a step back and slipped his hand into his pouch, drawing out 2 food pills. He tossed onto Akamaru, before popping one in his own mouth. Let's go Akamaru. Man, beast clones. He shouted as Akamaru leapt on his back. In a flash there were 2 Kibas. They ran at Naruto on all 4s. Fang over Fang. They shouted. Naruto leapt out of the way. Kiba came to a stop. You know you're pretty pathetic, he said with all the honesty in the world. It takes you 3 tries to pass the academy graduation exam, which you only passed in the end on a technicality. Then you botch every D-ranked mission you go on, only succeeding at those missions because of Sasuke, and then. Kakashi turned to Kurenai. Kurenai, whatever happens to Kiba, you cannot hold it against Naruto, he said. Kiba is going to bring it onto himself. Kurenai looked at him surprised. Excuse me? She said. Naruto is about to kill Kiba, said Kakashi as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. I fail to see how that's going to happen, she replied. He can't even put up a good fight, let alone beat Kiba. Naruto's emotions are buried, not gone, said Kakashi. Kiba is about to unleash a rage he'll never forget. In this state he could destroy even me in a fight. Sakura was just as confused as Kurenai. She gazed at the 2 taking and realization dawned on her. Kiba, that idiot, she said. Is he trying to get killed? You let Sasuke die, you did nothing to help him, as he defended you. You are the one who killed him by being weak and hesitating. Kiba finished laughing. Naruto's face darkened into something that was pure rage. Kiba kept on laughing. What's that cat got your tongue? He said smiling. I am going to kill you, shouted Naruto, realzing a ki that made everybody freeze. He tore his shirt off. His entire torso was covered in scars like he'd been stabbed by hundreds of thin weapons, needle scars, proof of the Battle of the Bridge. This is proof of what happened at the BRIGDE, you motherfucker. He then vanished only to reappear right in front of Kiba and smashed him to the ground. He rained punch after punch into Kiba's face. The second Kiba ran at Naruto and knocked him off Kiba. Naruto skidded to a halt on one knee. Kiba dragged himself to his feet, rage burning in Naruto's eyes. He hated him. He wanted his blood so bad, but then he thought, I don't want to kill him, I want to torture him, make him suffer. He will feel the pain I had to endure for so long. This is getting intense, said Shikamaru. Naruto is completely different from when we were in the academy. You said it, replied Ino, a bit nervous as to what was going to happen next. The three Junin senseis moved together as a reaction, in case they had to intervene. Naruto glanced up at Kakashi, a question in his eyes, rage still there waiting to be unleashed. "Go ahead Naruto," he replied, giving him permission. The third Hokage had been watching all the fights with mild interest. This fight, however, he'd been paying the closest attention to. He'd promised Minato he'd watch over the boy. He wanted to see how far he'd come. He'd been pleasantly surprised at many points in the match, but in Kakashi's words, he sat up a bit straighter. In fact, everyone in the building seemed to be watching closing. "Kakashi, what are you talking about?" asked Asuma. "Just watch," said Kakashi. "Keep your eyes on Naruto, he's about to surprise you." Naruto slowly closed his eyes. "Sasuke," thought Naruto, "lend me your strength, help me, please, show me the way." Then he opened his eyes. Then he stood up straight, proud and tall, his earlier rage increased tenfold. After 10 months of training, Naruto snapped his eyes open, unveiling the Mangekyo Sharingan, which looked like a star. Imagine Sasuke's Mangekyo Sharingan. The entire building let out a gasp. The Hokage leapt to his feet. "Sharingan, but that's... If any of you ever wondered why I insisted on continuing Naruto's train myself," said Kakashi, "now you know." "Sharingan!" exclaimed Kurenai, "but how? When?" "In the land of the waves," said Kakashi. "Sasuke didn't die protecting Naruto. He died as they fought side by side. During the fight, Naruto was pierced by senbons as he defended Sasuke's body. Before Sasuke passed on, Sasuke gave Naruto the Sharingan, as a gift of friendship and brotherhood. The village grieves over the loss of the Uchiha clan, while Naruto grieves the loss of Sasuke Uchiha, the closest thing he's ever had to a brother, his best friend and his first friend. The village slanders him for allowing the last of the Uchiha to die, while Naruto punishes himself for not being able to protect a comrade, which is exactly how I felt with Obito and Rin. In fact, I believe Shikamaru here is the only one who's ever taken the time to check on Naruto. Every single one of them looked ashamed of themselves." Kakashi turned his gaze to Sakura, who was beaming with pride for her sensei and for her teammate. No matter how hard he tried, Kiba couldn't tear his gaze away from Naruto's eyes. It entranced him, drew him in. Something told Naruto to use a genjutsu with his right eye. It called it Tsukiyomi. Naruto said, "Kiba, you brought this on yourself." He then whispered Tsukiyomi, his right eye spinning, putting Kiba into the ultimate genjutsu. Kiba looked around to see that he was tied to a cross with Naruto looking at him. He thought, "What the hell is this place?" Naruto calmly stated, "You are in my realm, I am God here. I control everything, even the matter. You will be here for 24 hours. With that, Naruto brought out a sword from nothingness and stabbed it into Kiba. Eventually Kiba saw that there was hundreds of him being stabbed at the same time, which was insanely painful, making him scream and pant, hoping it was over already. Naruto spoke up and said, "You have 23 hours 55 minutes to go." Everyone wondered why they just stared at each other for 3 seconds until Kiba collapsed screaming and convulsing. Every Junin ran to where Kiba was. He was sweating profusely like he was tortured over and over again. When the screaming stopped, he passed out. They all looked at Naruto and asked what he did. Naruto merely said, "He brought upon himself," and walked away. The medics rushed to where Kiba was and hauled him off on a stretcher. The Hokage looked very surprised at the power Naruto had. He was a little scared because Naruto merely looked at him and made him pass out from mental strain. Because his opponent is unable to continue, the winner in Naruto Uzumaki, said Hayate. Naruto went back to where the rest of the genins were and rested on the railing. "Leave it to you to have something like that under your belt," said Shikamaru in a calm voice. "That was awesome," said Hanabi. "Why didn't you tell me you had the Sharingan?" "I wasn't allowed to reveal it until now," replied Naruto. The rest of the Rookie 9 congratulated him. After the rest of the Rookie 9 left him, Sakura pulled Naruto into a hug. "Great job Naruto," she said. Naruto hesitated for a minute, then returned it, holding her tightly. "Very good Naruto," said Kakashi. "What did you do, by the way?" Naruto smirked and said, "I put him into a genjutsu and tortured him for 24 hours. Try not to do that all the time," Kakashi said with a "that's freaky" face on. Noticing Naruto did not have a shirt, Kakashi said, "Here," pulling off his Junin vest and draping it over his shoulders. "Wear this until we can get you a shirt." Thanks again, said Naruto, slipping his arms through it and zipping it up. The next two opponents were Hinata and Neji Hyuga. They stood across from each other. Hinata looked terrified, scared like she wanted run. Then she took a quick glance at Naruto. Her resolve seemed to harden. They both took the same stance. Of course, said Lee. That is the Hyuga style, that is why their stances are the same. They are both from the Hyuga clan. It's amazing, he said. They released sharp bursts of chakra, driving them into their opponent's body. Neji finally landed a blow on her throat, causing her to back up. Clutching at her chest, the resolve drained from her face for a split second before returning. She charged him again, taking a hard shot right to the heart. Damn it, said Naruto, she fought a good fight, but it's over. He turned off the Sharingan. Then a gasp escaped his lips. She was getting back up. No, 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 he said. Stay down, don't do anything crazy. She dragged herself to her feet. Neji let out a cry of rage and charged. In a flash, Naruto disappeared, only to reappear right in front of Neji. The fight is over, Neji, he said. Neji scoffed and left the arena floor. Naruto turned and ran to Hinata. He was soon joined by Kurenai, who knelt down and yanked her jacket open. She's going into cardiac arrest, she said. Naruto leapt out of the way as the medical corps raced in. They had her up and gone in 15 seconds. Naruto returned to his team, where Sakura wrapped her arms around Naruto's right arm. Her previous inhibitions forgotten. The board on the wall scanned through names and came to a stop on Dosu, the Sound Nin, and Choji. As soon as the match started, Choji tried to use his human boulder technique, but Dosu was too fast and he hit Choji with the weird glove, making Choji fall down, his ears bleeding. Dosu then held a kunai to his throat and Hayate called the match. That was quick, was all Naruto could say. The last match was Rock Lee vs Gaara. Gaara stood across from Lee with his arms crossed and the gourd on his back pouring sand. So that's what's in that gourd, mumbled Naruto, it's sand. Lee charged Gaara with amazing speed, about to give Gaara a roundhouse kick to the head. The sand rose to Gaara's defense. Then it tried to wrap around Lee, but Lee jumped back onto the statue in the room and looked at Guy for approval. Guy merely said, "Take them off, Lee." Lee took a sitting position on top of the statue and took off the leg warmers that were covering his shins. Once taken off, he had weights wrapped around both shins. Lee removes them and lets out a big sigh of relief. That is much better. Naruto notices Neji looking at Lee, so he looks and then shows a look of smugness when he sees that Lee has taken off his weights. Sakura asked, "What are taking those weights off gonna do?" Asuma looked to Guy. "Those are training weights, right? Basic training equipment." Everyone looks at Guy. "Yes, they are. Everyday training weights you could get at any ninja store, but when Lee takes these off, his speed increases dramatically." Hanabi asked Guy, "How fast does he get?" Guy looks at Hanabi and says, "Try and keep up." From the railings, they were watching with confusion. Shikamaru says, "Training weights are old-fashioned." Shino says to him, "Yeah, but there must be more to it than just as it appears. Otherwise it wouldn't make his speed increase." Lee was looking at Gaara with a satisfied look. "Here I come," yelled Lee. Lee then dropped the weights and the room watched as they hit the ground and caused the floor to tremble and to create a large craters in the floor. Needless to say, everyone was shocked and amazed at the amount of weights this boy had on. Lee crouched down and in an instant he moved so fast he disappeared. Gaara's eyes widened and he jumped to the right, dodging Lee's punch. Damn him, he moves too fast for the sand to react, thought Gaara. As soon as Lee's feet touched the ground he disappeared again. He appeared behind Gaara, kicking him up into the air. Then Lee appeared behind him, wrapping his bandages around Gaara, hugging him. When they fell head first. Lee were making them spin rapidly. They hit the ground hard, making a huge crater. Lee finally stood up, but then he felt a sharp pain in his leg. Neji looked at Lee and could see him grabbing his leg. His time is up, thought Neji. Sakura asked, "Guy-sensei, what happened?" Guy looked worried and said, "Despite Lee's speed, when he takes off his weights there is a drawback. Since Lee is moving at a high speed, his muscles are going through a lot of strain, so right now he pulled his leg muscles." Lee was cursing under his breath about how he just needed a few more minutes. Gaara stood back up, his sand armor falling, sand slowly making its way to Lee, who was limping away. The sand grabbed Lee, surrounding him. "Sand coffin," said Gaara. Lee struggled, trying to get free. Gaara raised his open hand, pointing the palm at Lee. Naruto thought, I will not lose another comrade if I have the power to stop it, but I can't make it in time. What the fuck can I do? A little whisper said. Make illusion reality. I will guide you, don't worry about getting hurt, your blood will protect you from harm. Sand burial. The sand crushed Lee. Sakura turned away, hiding her face in Naruto's chest. Naruto had his Mangekyo Sharingan activated and said Izanagi. Blood spurted from the sand, but it instantly disappeared, and Lee was slumped next to the wall right beside Naruto. Guy and the rest of the Junins bolted down there thinking they were too late, until they realized nothing was there, which made Guy scream with rage. But before he was going to attack, Kakashi said incredibly, Guy, Lee is right next to Naruto, which shocked everyone. Everyone thought, how is that possible? We saw him get crushed. Now he's next to Naruto, just passed out. Hayate announced after, since Rock Lee cannot continue, Gaara wins. The sand retreated back into the gourd. Gaara then left the battlefield with a crazed look. He wanted his enemy dead, but he survived, which made his blood boil. Alright, and with that the third test preliminaries are complete, said Hayate. Can I get all the victors in a single file line in front of me? After they did as they were asked, the Hokage addressed them. First off, congratulations for passing the first round, he said. The finals will be held in 1 month, so use that time to train and learn new techniques. I wish you all the best of luck. You are dismissed. Naruto turned to his team. We have 1 month, he said. You'll all be ready, said Kakashi, but it'll be a long road. A week later, the Hokage told Naruto that they were going to destroy the Uchiha compound tomorrow and that he should head over there today to get anything he wanted to keep of Sasuke's. He also informed Naruto that he found Sasuke's will, and it said that he left all his belongings and money to Naruto, which made Naruto gaze down, remembering his old friend, trying not to cry, which he let a few tears escape, thinking Sasuke considered him a friend before he did. The third continued, saying that since he was the last Uchiha, that meant all the Uchiha's funds were Naruto's, which was a lot of money. Day after, Naruto headed over to Sasuke's house. Naruto brought along Sakura because he needed someone to walk him back home after he transplanted the eyes. He was thinking of Sasuke's warning on the way. If you ever need to light the darkness, replace my eyes with my brother's. His eyes are held in my house, hidden in the hidden room in the basement. So just in case, he would transplant it now, so that would never happen. He also remembered the object of Sasuke's revenge that Naruto would complete for him in his memory. Flashback. Naruto overheard an older villager one time say, I heard Uchiha Itachi gave his life to protect his brother when him and a man in a swirling orange mask killed off his clan, and before they left the man in the mask went to kill Sasuke, but Itachi gave his life to protect Sasuke. No one ever figured out why Itachi would give his life for his brother, because he helped slaughter his clan. But Sasuke wanted revenge on the man in the mask because the man in the mask killed his clan and his brother, who ended up saving him. End flashback. Naruto and Sakura arrived at the house at night because they didn't want to be spotted by a random villager. Both him and Sakura entered Sasuke's house, which in all honesty, even as his teammates, they have never been inside before. They wandered in and found that everything had a lot of dust and cobwebs on it, which made them think of how they missed Sasuke. Naruto found the way to the basement. He and Sakura made their way down to find it completely empty. Naruto said, Sasuke said that there is a hidden room that held his brother's eyes. Sakura replied cautiously, I can't see anything because of the dark. Naruto replied, I can't either, but maybe I can see it with the Sharingan activated. With that, Naruto activated the Sharingan and saw the hidden lever that opened the door. He walked over and pulled it to see an empty room with a fridge inside. They walked in and opened the fridge and saw a jar with 2 eyeballs preserved perfectly. Naruto said to Sakura, I am going to transplant the eyes now. This is what Sasuke wanted, even though I don't know why, but we are still gonna keep his eyes preserved though. Sakura asked, why can't you just keep his eyes? Naruto didn't want to tell Sakura this, but said, Sakura, Sasuke said, if you ever need to light the darkness, replace my eyes with my brother's. His eyes are held in my house, hidden in the hidden room in the basement. I think he was implying that I will go blind by using it unless I transplant his brother's eyes into me, and to tell you the truth, since I've been using his Sharingan, I've felt my eyesight slightly decrease. She responded by saying, okay. 10 minutes later, Naruto was being escorted by Sakura back to his apartment, his eyes wrapped in bandages. When they arrived about 30 minutes later, Sakura let him in, leading him towards the bedroom, and when they got there she helped him get changed, which made her face red, because she could not help but notice that he was packing. She led him to the bed and tucked him in, saying she would be back because she needed to take a shower before she went to bed. Naruto could feel the power flowing into him. It felt amazing, like he could take on the world, and he started silently laughing at the thought. He noticed Sakura enter the room. For some reason he could smell her. She had a very enticing perfume on. She slipped into the covers and she said to Naruto, "I've been thinking about this a lot lately and I found that I really love you, Naruto." Naruto deadpanned. He had no idea what to say other than, I love you too, Sakura." He could tell that she smiled. She then kissed him on the lips passionately, but a little bit clumsy at first. Then she started to understand what to do. Naruto at first felt his mind freeze up, and he stiffened, but he eventually started kissing back. They continued for a while until Sakura said, "I want you, Naruto, but I am not sure if it's the right time because of the bandages." Naruto replied after thinking about it, "Sakura, I love you, you love me. This is a perfect moment for us." With that they made love, becoming one. Bit of a teaser, lol. 2 weeks later, when Naruto removed his bandages that morning in the bathroom, he looked into the mirror and activated his Mangekyo Sharingan. What he saw surprised him. It looked like a star shape melded with a tri-shuriken shape. Put Sasuke's plus Itachi's together. He then set off in search of Kakashi to train.
That's all for now. If you want to see next part, then please like this video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.